layers of the aura thing, I really am dying to like geek out on what all seven are. I mean, in the Master shows both chakras and their functions, they have one called the soul aura. I'm trying to count seven. I know there's two mental, two emotional, and then etheric, and then a soul aura, like addressed by Gloria of Lebanon.
Yeah, Gloria of Lebanon's the most outer layer. The ones that are real close to the body are tied to, like, it's like kind of an alchemical way of looking at it. So like the most inner part is like tied to like solid matter, and then the next layer is more liquid, and then the next is more like gas. But you know, it's not literal. It's more like kind of, yeah, metaphorical. And so you could even look at it as kind of like the elements of sorts. And so as you start to unwind, like the more outer parts start to be more emotional, then more eventually more mental, and then eventually even more plausible. But you know, when I was doing, you know, healing all the time, you know, I'd go through and clean people up, but you know, sometimes you would see like some people would get better faster, and then there'd be somebody you'd work on, and you're like, oh, no matter what I do, like nothing's, you know, they're not responding, like they're not getting better.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would look at it like maybe I'm not doing the right approach, maybe it's the wrong healing, maybe the vibration is too low, too high, you know, you know, whatever it is. A lot of times I would come back to the aura itself, and I would just start going, okay, what happens if I check into layer one? What happens if I go to the next layer? What happens if I go to the next layer? And almost every time there was something in one of the layers. And so, you know, even, you know, when we've talked about certain situations, remember when we were talking about energy healing, I'd say sweep the person and then turn around and then sweep like outward.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what I'm having you do. Like, now, if you wanted to, just like we're going through with the incenses, you can go, okay, the outer layer, the next layer, the next layer, the next layer. I mean, it's time consuming. Like, I mean, if you do it really thoroughly, I mean, that could take 30 minutes, but the healing will be very deep, you know.
Okay, do I have to use electric violet, for instance, for like
I would rotate between green and electric violet.
Okay, for each one?
Yeah, you know, because part of the issue is that, like, that as you are starting to like expel things off, the body is getting congested. And like, think of it like, I know in the old days we used to talk about this. I don't know how much they talk about it now, but as soon as you start cleaning the aura, like even like with the Sandalphon technique where we go through the layers, part of what you're doing is you're increasing the size of the spiritual cord. Like, you know, as soon as you do general sweeping on somebody, like even when you do a salt bath, part of what you're doing is you're increasing the size of the spiritual cord. You know, as soon as you clean off the aura. And so the more thorough you do that, the more soul contact, which means more energy is going to different parts of the body. And then whatever you do after that becomes more effective, more efficient. And so, you know, a lot of times people will go, yeah, let's do this, but let's get into the good stuff. And there was a couple patients that I had that all I really focused on was the aura, you know, the energy body, not even chakras. And it's what fixed the situation, what cured them. And so, like, for example, like, you know, way back in the day, I said, like, over the weekend, like I specialized in addiction. You know, I had like these little phases where I would specialize in something for a couple of years and then I'd move on to something else. It wasn't that I wasn't doing other things, but I did a majority of that kind of work for a little while. And so we hit this point where we had a bunch of they were like late teenagers, like, you know, so like 16, 17, 18, but more like 17, 18, 19 kind of. And they were heavy meth users, you know. And out of all the substances to go through and treat with people, like somebody who is a constant meth user is one of the hardest things to treat. Like heroin, much easier to treat. You know, cocaine, it takes a while, but easier to treat. Meth was rough. Like it was not an easy one. And it was hard to even keep them in therapy, even if, you know, we could get them into therapy. Sometimes we couldn't even do that. And you know, at one point, let's just say I was not happy with the results in this particular population that we were addressing. Like everywhere else, it was taking a while, but I was like, you know, we're making progress. Like I feel pretty solid about this. You know, it's not an easy thing to treat, whatever it is, but the meth population, I was just not happy with. We really weren't getting a greater results. And so, you know, I just sat and I had a little talk with myself, and I was like, you know, what if we did this? What if we did that? And I noticed that my mind was going to more complicated and more complicated things. And I just stopped for a moment and I was like, you know, when something's not working, you don't make them more complicated, you make them more simple. And so I was like, let's just step back and go really, really, really simple. And so what I started doing is I had the moms, you know, I would teach them how to do basic, like just general sweeping. And I was like, every day for 10 minutes, I want you to just do general sweeping. Don't worry about cutting cords. Don't worry about cleaning something out. Don't worry about like trying to address a symptom. Just every day, clean the aura. Just do general sweeping, you know, clean the aura, do the health raise. And the ones that we did, like there was these 4 patients that were, let's just say they were not compliant. Like they were not wanting to stop, basically. And within 30 days, 3 of them asked to go, like just out of the blue, came to their mom and said, you know what, I want to go to rehab. And the 4th one, it took about 45 days. It was like 45 or 50 days. And all 4 of them went into rehab. And, you know, we still kept doing healing, but I was like, it's working. We're just going to stay with general sweeping. They'll get the medical attention that they're supposed to, and let's just stay with that. And, you know, at least the time that I was interacting with them, there was not a backslide. And so it shows how potent cleaning the aura can be, like the potential of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, they do still emphasize that in the class. Like we scanned the cord before and after, just done.
Yeah. Good. I mean, because that's a huge thing to like, if you perceive that, like that changes the whole rest of the day. Yeah.
Agreed. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so then I have it should be a short question. I'm just reading Astara again. Can you translate brain dues to pranic healing language? What are brain dues in Astara?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Brain dues?
Yeah, brain, BRAIN. In the Astara lessons, they talk about, I'm guessing that's a type of energy, but they just talk about brain dues that come into your head or crown chakra or aura or something based on like spiritual advancement and
like dues, like DEW.
Yeah.
So there is a spot. Wow, I can't believe she was talking about that. Like I've read that the whole, you know, all the degree lessons a few times, and I still like go, I don't remember that. I remember that from other practices, but there's just different traditions try approaching it in different ways, but there's an energy right under the base of your skull. And then there's also an energy that happens when like the pineal gland and the pituitary do something together. There's like kind of an energy and even like a little bit of a fluid that gets released. And it will change the energy body quite substantially. And so you could say, you know, how in certain meditations they'll say like visualize a star on your crown. Mm-hmm. That's part of what you're doing is you're like starting to like tap into that, right? You know, a little bit with the awareness on the pineal gland, but when you put your awareness on the top of the crown and you visualize a star, you're starting to like stimulate that a little bit, and little tiny amounts are being released into the meridians that eventually hit the chakras. Then there's things that you do potentially with like the navel minor, even some of the lower centers where you kind of it's like the way you could say it is like you kind of cook it a little bit, right? So that's another way of doing it. But you know how we go through and do the patterns with the organs of blood purification. You know, we do the lungs, we do the liver, you do the spleen, you do the gallbladder, you're doing the kidneys. That's a very ancient way of doing it as well. And I'm kind of fond of that way because it's simple. Like it's just, it's very, very simple. It can start to get a little bit complicated, but if you notice, like a lot of times in Buddhist practices, like in thangkas and things, you'll see like 5, like looks like little lingams in front of like the Buddha or they're not always there, but like the Buddha or Padmasambhava, or, you know, there'll be like these like 5 like little like vessels or like these little like lingam looking things. That's also tied to a particular practice. And then you see like some of the Dharma protectors will have some of those same sort of imagery, but those 5 are on their head, like almost like a hat or a helmet, but they're just like stuck around the head, and it's tied to the transmutation of these energies that are stuck in your basic chakra. And Kabbalistically, they call them by something different, but they are basically the same thing. And there's 5. And so when you go through and you do these practices, part of what you're doing is you're moving those from being something negative down at your basic or in the basic, and you're moving them up towards the top of your head. And it's actually tied to what we're doing in this series, where we did the Sandalphon, we did the 4 directions, we did the streams of consciousness, and then we did the one with the white light, and then like this coming up weekend we're doing the focused mind. And it's not like focus like, oh, I gotta grind on details. Like it's more of being able to stay focused like on the soul, being able to stay focused on like more upper things that you're choosing, rather than being distracted by the normal everyday whole of life and difficulties and other people and you know, the collective and all that. And so you're refining this process of that. And then the following one, we're talking about like the regeneration of the soul, right? The cultivation of grace. And you're moving these things up in like a different way. And so in Kabbalistic teachings, they would refer to them as the 5 cursed nations, right? And the idea of even the term cursed is not like punishment, but it's like whenever you're like at odds or adversarial with something, you get it like entangled with it, or you have to like dance your way out of it, you could say. You know, like in psychology they would say, like when somebody's having a difficulty, like if you go like, okay, I'm so afraid of being rejected that I start treating people in a particular way, and then I become a self-fulfilling prophecy of everybody rejects me because of a behavior that I've been doing, you know, because I'm so afraid that the people are going to do that it like affects your behavior. So a lot of times whatever you're trying to keep out is actually the thing that you end up struggling with, because you're at odds with it, you're not integrating it. And so the thing is not to be at odds with those things, but just like almost embrace those aspects of like, because they're not, you could say they're not you, the soul, they're the part that is tied to the body and being and form, and nobody gets away from it. So the more that you're at odds with it, that is the curse. Like the curse is the conflict. And so if you go, okay, I mean, this is it in a nutshell, I'm going to love this. Whatever it is, I'm going to love it. I'm going to accept it. I accept that I have to work my way through this. And it becomes a thing that highly accelerates your spiritual development. But at first, when we start wrestling with it, or we're like a young soul, it's a curse because it is the thing that we're in conflict with. We have these 5 conflicts that you have to wrestle with. And then at some point you're like, ugh, I don't have the juice in my legs for this anymore. Like, really, I got to keep doing this. And so you start kind of relaxing into it and starting to go, okay, this is just the nature of being in a body. This is the nature of the lower nature. This is, you know, whatever it is. And those 5 lingams go from down at your feet and they move up to your crown. So it could be, you could say it's like Kundalini moving up. You could say it's the negative energy down by your feet being offered up to the aspects of bringing in light and the aspect of oneness. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about the snakes being offered up to the bird realm, or Garuda. You know, the peacock is always conquering the cobra, right? And it's the symbolism of this play between these 2 things. And so different traditions talk about it in very, very different ways. But if you think about, even like if you look at the flag for Mexico, or the symbol for Mexico, it is an eagle standing on a rock with a snake in its mouth. That is a very spiritual symbol. That's not just like something they saw. That is tied to these things that they talk in Buddhism. But, you know, here it was from the indigenous people, you know, the Aztecs, or the whoever it was, Aztecs or Mayans, I can't remember. But it's a thread that's woven through a lot of different traditions. And so any version of this starts to release these aspects of that dew, and then it starts to hit the energy body, it starts to hit the chakras. And you could say it in a lot of different ways. Like it changes your state, it changes your being. But like our thoughts, our words, our actions, our behaviors, we're constantly cultivating something, even if we're not aware of it. And the thing that we're cultivating is below our feet. And we could be cultivating something in that's associated with the realm that's in the animal nature. It could be in the deeper layer where it's more about like peace, and even the layer below that, you know, that one that's peace is like kind of the states that you would achieve like in meditation and things. the layer below that is like where the saints and the great teachers, the gurus, and then even below that is where great teachers and avatars are. And so it's literally like when they talk of hell or heaven, it's like on earth. It's a state that you're in. Like you could be having heaven on earth, you could be having hell on earth, depending on what's cultivated and what you've kind of tapped into below your feet, or what you keep feeding down below your feet. And so a lot of traditions where they, bless the earth, release things through your feet, practices of that nature, it is to like break out of that first realm that is tied to more suffering and get into that deeper part that is more in a peaceful, more meditative kind of state of awareness or state of being. And so even the idea of the streams of consciousness and doing the different things with the mind and the soul and all of that, that's what you're doing, is you're constantly trying to cultivate that. So, we did the Sandalphon, the Four Directions, the streams of consciousness, and then the class with the white light. I can't remember what we called it. And then the focused mind is like, now you're trying to focus on the things that you're trying to bring in. So it's not about like, I can really crank through details. It's like, I want to bring in these components into my life, and I don't want to be distracted by normal everyday life. I don't want to be distracted by the conflicts. I don't want to be distracted by people being mean to me or whatever and pulling me off track. I'm going to stay focused in the things that I'm bringing in, and you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and then eventually we'll work the last component in November, where it is the bringing in of the divine essence, the essence from the other side of the veil. And so it's a different way of saying the same thing. Those dues, those mental dues, or the energy drops that start to hit the energy body, it changes a person. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you behave. All of a sudden, like, tensions just will start to leave your body. Yeah, you could feel anxious about something, and then after a while you're like, situation hasn't changed, but my reaction to it has changed. Like, it's not what it used to be. And that's the goal. Like, I would say that is the more genuine inner healing. Like, there's healing, there's physical healing, there's emotional healing, the mental healing. All that healing is trying to get you into that inner healing, like that healing where it doesn't matter what happens to the body, to the emotions, to the mind in those situations. Even if it's difficulty, it's like, yeah, I'll just deal with it. In a way, you stop seeing the difference between this is good or this is bad. It's just everything's like really temporary. Like, even the good state, it's like temporary. The bad, it's temporary. You're seeing less through the eyes of duality, and you're seeing more through the eyes of just oneness, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And everything that we're doing, we're always working toward that, like, by the way. But if you really wanted to say, like, I really want to go at it, that working the pattern with the organs of blood purification is there, but that one that we've been doing recently is the more potent form of it. And let me pull it up, or maybe Letty can pull it up if she's on. It's the one that starts with the lungs instead of the brain. I think it was in the last class, or maybe it's in the one coming up. I can't remember. Give me just a second and I'll pull it up.
Yeah, thank you. Reading it, I was like, this is probably just like electric violet is what they're trying to say. So I did not expect such a great answer. It's a lot more going with it than I thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's considered very like inner teachings, and so usually when they talk about it, they're a little bit more. It's not that they're trying to hide it; it's just. I'm trying to do two things at once, and I'm a boy. I'm not good at it. Hold on. We'll find it and we'll post it. We'll maybe it's in 3. Yeah, here we go. I got it. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it's in a lot of teachings, but a lot of times with inner teachings, it's like there's exposure and they just kind of keep going deeper and deeper, like little bits at a time. Because if you go too fast, too quick, it can make a person like push back and takes harder to come back to that at some point. You know, like, so you just kind of keep like dancing close, dancing back, dancing close, dancing back. And so yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like blissful. My limited experience with it, like I would say, blissful. I wouldn't use the word blissful. I would say peaceful, and I would say, especially like when there's like a new wave of it, it's just really like the things you see, the things that kind of become part of your awareness. It's just like beautiful. Like that's the best way I can say it. And it almost kind of doesn't even matter what's going on. You just look around and you just go, yeah, this is all good. Even when it's like weird and chaotic, you just like, yeah, this is just life. You know, it's kind of like what well, you could say like seeing through like life size, you know, instead of because even if you think about like that phrase, we come in, we have our inner experiences, and then we're kind of at odds with our environment. And at some point, when you really like harmonize with it, and there's like kind of a union with the outer world, you're having your inner experiences, but the outer world isn't affecting you anymore. And so you're seeing things like through the eyes of life. And so in different traditions, they would call this by different names, but when they talk of like say Mother Mary, and they say, you know, she was a virgin, it wasn't that she didn't have sex. I mean, her sex life I have no idea about, but the esoteric teaching of that is not about sex. It's about not being influenced by human activity. Like she was a presence that was not reacting to the things going on in the world. She was just present, right? And so in shamanic practices, they would say like seeing through life size. You know, you're not reacting to it, you're just kind of one with it, but the presence is there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, intellectually, I'm still working on having the inner experience to begin with before I integrate it to the outer world.
Yeah. Even just keep contemplating it. Like, you know, like that's the thing with contemplation is you don't have to have an answer. Like you can just contemplate it and go, huh, curious, interesting. And then you can just let that be. And it just allows for more information to come in. I would say some of the most powerful words that for myself through the years have been, I don't know. I really don't know. You know, I just, you know, you keep sitting with it. I'm like, I just don't know what's going on here. You know, it allows for more truth to come in.
Yeah. I mean, I've been wrong about everything. So
Yeah.
but like I'm just not gonna guess anymore. I'm just
Right.
take it day by day. I really haven't been right about anything.
Right.
I can't think of a major thing or even like a medium thing that I was like, I was right about. I made that plan and it happened. Like just no, nothing. So,
Well, like
out, right?
I think I've shared with you guys, like one of the teachers that I had, like, he was in the Nyingma tradition, and he was practicing Buddhist, and like if they said do these mantras for 4 hours, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna do 8. And if they said do these for 3 days, he'll go, I'm gonna do it for a week. And whatever, do these devotional practices for whatever it was. And I mean, he was just diligent, diligent, diligent. And then in the middle of one day, he just said, you know, he was doing it, he was doing it, and he goes, I had a realization. This is all bullshit. And so he went to the Lama and he said, you've been giving me busy work. And why? Like, and he started kind of pushing the Lama, like, why did you do that? And he said that the Lama got really uncomfortable for a little bit. And then he calmed down and like made eye contact. And he goes, yeah, you're right. And he said, you just have to break down these like biological drives for a while. And at that point where you get exhausted, he goes, that's the teaching moment. Like you really just have to exhaust it. And so even that idea of the contemplation, it's like your mind wants to do all these things. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to understand this. I want to understand that. And as much as you think like, don't do that. Like sometimes, like, I mean, that is a practice in Buddhism where you just go, let's just take it deeper. Let's just, ugh. And then at some point you just go, give up. And then that's the moment.
Yeah. I definitely get at least part of that. Probably there's more to get, but
yeah. I think there's always layers. Because like even some of the practices that like when I've been around the Dalai Lama, not that him and I are hanging out, but the times where I've been around him and those kinds of settings, he does that practice and then they'll just like sit. And so in shamanic practices, the way that they would get to that is they would do purifications and they would purify like the animalistic parts of themselves. And so like those parts would die off and, like, okay, I have this aggression, I have this, whatever, these fears or whatever. And so you would go through and you would purify that. And in that dying off state, it's like you hit that wall, like you hit that place where you're like, I don't know what to think now. Like I've let that go. So this whole idea of being born again in Christ or in the Buddhist tradition, dying and being reborn, these like little steps over and over and over again. It is literally that where you have those, I don't know what's going on anymore. And then you're able to have more truth come in, you can say.
Yeah. I mean, I just was so tunnel vision for so long. I just feel like I have taken a straitjacket off, and right. I really don't know anything. I don't, I have no plans. I have very loose plans for my life, but it's like right. I'm just much happier. I don't care. Before I was like, I know exactly what to do. I had doing all the practices. Right. I'm being perfect. I'm being this and that, and I felt that like that gave me comfort because to have nothing, right. I was freaked out. So it's okay, but it's way better now.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, keep that up. Like keep contemplating, and even if you go like, I'm really going down the rabbit hole. Even like over the weekend, I was talking about I'd go down the rabbit hole, and then I'd get all done, and then I'd burn my notes. Like I'd be sure to get every last detail done. I was like, it feels done. Set them on fire. That was before iPads and all that. It was a booklet, and I would set it on fire. And it was so that I could let go of the stories and projections and everything, and just keep letting things go, not being attached to the story, so that I can sit with the truth.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Used to make my peers crazy, but